Are you in need of serious psychiatric help? Do you hear the sweet siren song of car keys jingling in your pocket after one too many yan-jings? If so, boy do I have the show for you. First of all, this video isn't going to be groundbreaking news to the most of you. The series I'm talking about has received massive critical acclaim, culminating in 3 Emmys at the latest awards show. So, with that in mind, this video is more akin to an ode to beef. As the title might suggest, I'll be talking about the 2023 Netflix series Beef, and more specifically, why I absolutely loved it. In the spirit of a real video essay, allow me to give you some background on the series itself. The initial 10-episode release was originally pitched way back in 2021. Shortly after, Netflix purchased the rights to the series. Creator, writer, and executive producer Lee-Sung-Jin originally planned for the show to feature 2 male leads, one of whom would be the already cast Steven-Yeun. This idea was scrapped, however, once Ali-Wong joined the project. The series itself follows 2 characters, a small business owner Amy-Lau, looking to exit her high-pressure life by selling to a retail giant, and freelance contractor Danny-Cho, who just wants to bring his family back to the States after their motel went bust due to criminal activity he allowed to take place. The 2 meet in a department store car park and become embroiled in a road rage incident that sees them flying down residential streets and over neighborhood flower beds whilst Danny tries to get a glimpse of who's driving the other car. Stemming from this is a hilarious, complicated, often far too sinister pattern of attempts at revenge by both parties. So now that we're up to speed on the show, what makes it such a hit? Off the bat, you can't talk long about the merits of Beef without mentioning the performances of both the co-leads and supporting cast. The life they bring to their roles and the personal experiences they draw on to deliver their parts in every episode is outstanding. As with every great piece of cinema or TV, a lot of this is down to the writers and their tactful insertion of traits and events which mirror the lives of the cast. For example, the relatively minor supporting character Edwin, played by Justin-Min, actually does lead his church's band, as he does in the show, and also partakes in his church's basketball tournaments. Of course, this isn't exactly a high-stakes parallel, and it likely didn't have too much of an impact on its character's portrayal, but one that certainly did is Ali-Wong's real-life transition to motherhood. Ali has gone on the record multiple times talking about how Beef gave her the appropriate outlet for talking about motherhood, work life, and relationships that she hasn't found a way to talk about on stage during her stand-up comedy career. And although the show's writing talent has certainly better channeled its cast's on-screen performances, the performances themselves are exceptional. Danny and Amy's story captivates the viewer in a unique way by walking a tightrope of sorts between a classic anti-hero appeal and the audience's desire for conflict resolution. Throughout the entirety of the show, I found myself longing for the pair to make up and call it a day, but I reveled in their petulant and malicious shenanigans. And a huge part of that dissonance is the twisted likability the show leads project. Each character is a horrible human being in their own right, but Yeun and Wong's ability to rapidly shift between childlike vindictiveness and complex, vulnerable crises serves not only to make it impossible for me to pick a side, but also builds up my perception of the character only to shatter it with the next deplorable act. This kind of dynamic role can be pretty special when done right, which it certainly is here. I've already mentioned the quality of writing from a character perspective, but plot-wise, I adore how the show's structure is built. As the series goes on, the feud escalates in an entirely non-linear fashion, with Amy and Danny's focus on one another waxing and waning with the volatility in each of their lives. This allows for some moment of varying tension and vulnerability to take place during their ceasefires. All the while in the background, they become more and more inexorably linked as they foster initially ill-willed relationships with important figures in one another's lives, which ironically blossom into meaningful ones. Simultaneously, their own individual stories are unfolding in the background. For the most part, Danny's is filled with disappointment and regret, with most of his ventures being foiled in some capacity. By stark contrast, Amy's story seems to continuously fail upwards. After being so desperate to leave her business behind, she ends up signing a contract dictating that she stays for 5 years. Her marriage recovers rapidly from the stress that the deal placed on it, and then the road rage incident she had been trying to sweep under the rug for so long is resolved in an afternoon after somebody else takes the fall for her. Obviously, none of her successes came without cost, and most are short-lived, but this massive disparity between Danny and Amy's lives somehow still seems to lead them to one another in the end. Speaking of ends, there's one thing this show accomplishes which really sets it apart from other hit miniseries in my opinion. It has a good ending. A lot of shows like this tend to fall down at the final hurdle. They either scramble for a built-in segue to the next season, which may or may not come, or they just lose sight of a resolution that actually does the story justice. In Beef's case, without spoiling the ending itself, neither of these are true. The story culminates in a way that gives the viewer just enough to feel satisfied whilst remaining frugal enough for the imagination to run wild. It leaves us on a kind of pseudo cliffhanger that allows the viewer to wonder what happens post-Beef, but doesn't leave too many questions that the show feels unfinished. From what I can gather, this achievement is one that's been recognized by those who have watched the show, and with that recognition usually comes a plea to Netflix themselves. Don't make another season. The creator Lee-Sung-Jin has made some worrying comments about how he has 3 seasons mapped out in his mind, and while this one is a true work of art, those kind of statements strike fear into the heart of a fan, especially where Netflix is involved. Beef was something special while it lasted, but under no circumstances should it be renewed for a second, or God forbid, 3rd season. The way it was wrapped up was so final that I can't reconcile reconcile a single graceful way of bringing these characters back to the screen. And for what it's worth, I really hope they don't. So, that's it for my brief explanation of why I loved Beef. If you disliked any of my points or just want to start beef of your own, feel free to leave childish remarks in the comments section below. I read them all. Thank you all for watching, like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more like this, and stay greasy, friends.